This story will focus on a man named Christian, a geologist by profession. Christian has just finished a job interview at an oil company. He plans to move his wife and 2 children to the city because he was accepted as an employee at the company after the interview. Upon arriving home, he finds his wife, Idun, fixing a leaky faucet. Christian tells Idun that there's no need to fix the leaky faucet because they will be moving to an apartment in the city. Idun works at a hotel. Their 2 children are Sandre and Julia. During lunch, Christian tells Idun and their children about the facilities provided by the company. They will live in an apartment where everything is automated. They can lock the house using a smartphone, curtains open by themselves, and other advanced facilities. That day, Christian also takes the time to say goodbye to his colleagues at the Central Monitoring Office for Mount Akerneset's activities. They are Arvid, the leader, Jacob, George, and Margot. They hold a small party for Christian's farewell. As Christian packs his belongings, he hears his 4 colleagues discussing the phenomenon of land subsidence detected on the screen. As a geologist, Christian finds this odd, but Arvid and the others assure him that all reports are still within normal limits. The next day, his children have already packed their belongings, while Christian is still disturbed by the land subsidence phenomenon that occurred yesterday. This slightly annoys Sandre because Christian is just sitting checking reports, while the others are busy packing. Idun then asks him to stop thinking about work at the Mount Akerneset Monitoring Center, because it's no longer his responsibility. Christian then helps pack and throws away archives about past disaster reports. At that moment, he sees Sandre throwing stones into the water. Christian approaches his son. Sandre says he doesn't want to move from Geiranger, but according to Christian, everything is done for the good and future of Sandre and Julia. All the belongings are neatly packed, and they say goodbye to their close neighbors. Christian, Sandre, and Julia will head to the city that morning, while Idun still has to go to work because her colleagues at the hotel can't help. While queuing for the ferry, Christian sees water coming out of the rocks. His mind goes back to the land subsidence phenomenon. Christian becomes lost in thought. Behind them, the queued cars are honking loudly for Christian to board the ferry quickly. But it turns out Christian doesn't board the ferry, and instead heads to his old office. Upon arrival, he asks his children to wait in the car. Christian runs into the building to inform his colleagues of the emergency. Christian says the mountain will slide without warning. However, unfortunately, Arvid doesn't believe it. To prove it, Christian and Jacob go to the site to check the equipment. Indeed, the sensor cable is cut due to the shifting of the rock plates. Back at the office, Christian urges Arvid to sound the warning alarm. But unfortunately, Arvid refuses to turn on the alarm because there are many tourists visiting Geiranger. Christian tries to get support from his 3 colleagues, but they all choose to remain silent. Christian leaves disappointed. When he returns to the car, his children are no longer there. He finds a note left on the car window. Apparently, his children have been picked up by Idun. Christian immediately heads to the hotel to pick up his family. Upon arrival, his wife, Idun, is angry because Christian left their children in the car. Idun then offers their children to sleep at the hotel that night since the ferry to cross is only available once a day. Sandre agrees to his mother's offer, while Julia prefers to sleep at their now empty house. Sandre has already gotten a room at the hotel, while Christian retrieves a discarded mattress and uses a chair to sleep that night. At the Mountain Monitoring Center, George, who is on duty, is shocked to see a contraction warning on the monitor screen. George immediately wakes up Margot to take further action. Margot contacts Arvid and Jacob, who are sleeping at the guard post. She reports contractions at Mount Akerneset. Arvid and Jacob then check the rock conditions at the scene. Simultaneously, Christian suddenly wakes up with his gaze fixed on the mountain right in front of his room's window. He has a bad feeling and decides to go outside. Christian calls his office just to make small talk, but his premonition turns out to be true. Margot says that contractions are currently happening. Without hesitation, Christian immediately looks for the archives he threw away that morning. Seeing birds flying in the sky, he reads a report about a past mountain collapse. After that, Christian contacts Margot again and asks to be connected with Arvid. At that moment, Arvid and Jacob are checking all the equipment. Christian orders them to evacuate quickly because a large landslide is imminent. At the hotel, Sandre is bored in his room and goes out with his skateboard. He puts on headphones and listens to very loud music. Sandre will not hear any warning alarms. The situation suddenly becomes critical. Rocks start to fall and hit Jacob's leg. Arvid tries to save Jacob, but unfortunately time is running out. Arvid attaches his hook to Jacob because the support rope will not be able to hold them both. On the phone, Christian asks Margot to sound the warning alarm, but Margot can only remain silent. Finally, Arvid also tells Margot to sound the alarm. That's when the rocks start to slide, resulting in Arvid's death. All residents have only 10 minutes to reach the highest location to avoid being hit by the tsunami. The tsunami wave height can reach 80 meters. Christian drives his car as fast as possible while trying to contact Idun. Unfortunately, Idun is busy evacuating hotel guests to leave the hotel using a tour bus. A moment later, Idun sees a missed call and immediately calls her husband back. Christian answers the phone and asks where Idun and Sandre are. He also says that he is currently on his way to the hotel to pick them up, but Idun forbids him. She asks Christian to go to the hill to save Julia. Idun will follow using the bus with the hotel guests. Reluctantly, Christian agrees to his wife's command. Meanwhile, all hotel guests have been evacuated to the bus. At that moment, Idun panics because Sandre is not there. She goes back into the hotel to look for Sandre. Maria, one of the hotel guests, feels sorry and decides to help Idun find her child. Philip, Maria's husband, is forced to get off the bus to help Idun as well. They search around the hotel, but Sandre is not in his room. At that moment, Maria hears a noise from the basement. Idun then runs to the basement and finds Sandre happily playing with his skateboard. Back to Christian, his attempt to get to the hill is blocked because the cars of residents are lined up. The remaining time is running out. They will not reach the hill if they stay in the car. Christian exits the car and runs with all his might, urging people to leave their cars and run to the hill. Panic starts to grip everyone. A driver forgets to engage the handbrake, causing his car to roll back and trap a neighbor's leg. Christian entrusts Julia to Thomas while he tries to save Thomas's wife. Christian helps Anna run, but the tsunami wave is already visible. They won't make it. Christian decides to get back into the car with Anna, thinking it would be safer if the water hit the car rather than their bodies directly. Meanwhile, Idun, Sandre, Maria, and Philip run out of the hotel, but unfortunately the bus has left without them. The tsunami wave is almost reaching the hotel. They return inside except for Maria. Eventually, Idun pulls Maria back into the hotel. They run to the basement to avoid the tsunami wave, but sadly Maria does not survive. Christian regains consciousness after being hit by a massive wave. The car they were in has flipped over. Anna does not survive as she is impaled by a piece of metal. Christian quickly exits the car and looks for Julia. From a distance, Julia runs and hugs him. In the basement, the door to the room where Eden is taking shelter is almost breached. Water starts to flood the room. She tries to find an escape by breaking the ceiling, but the space is too narrow to pass through. Christian continues to search for his wife and son. He borrows someone's phone and asks if there is a tour bus on the hill. It turns out the bus couldn't reach the highest point because the hotel is only 1.7 meters above sea level. Water is almost filling the entire room where Eden and Sandre are taking shelter. They search for oxygen through the gap in the broken ceiling. Whether out of frustration over Maria's death or not, Philip suddenly behaves strangely. He tries to drown Idun and Sandre. Idun fights back. She attacks Philip, who is drowning Sandre. Philip dies from lack of air. Meanwhile, Christian convinces Julia to let him search for her mother and brother. Julia finally agrees and stays with Thomas and his child. In short, Christian reaches the hotel. He finds no one there, only Sandre's bag on the bed. Frustrated, he hits a metal pole in the room. The sound is heard by Idun and Sandre. They scream, but unfortunately Christian cannot hear them. Idun doesn't give up. She takes a wrench and hits it against a metal pipe. Christian finally hears the sound and locates them. He rushes to save his wife and child by opening a door blocked by wall debris. In short, Christian manages to save Idun, but as he guides Sandre to swim out, Sandre suddenly runs out of breath. Christian gives his last breath to Sandre. Sandre manages to swim out, while Christian runs out of air. Idun panics because only Sandre has managed to swim out. She goes back to bring Christian out. At that moment, Christian is unconscious. They try their hardest to save Christian by giving him artificial respiration and CPR. But unfortunately, Christian does not respond. Idun is ready to let go of Christian by closing her eyes, but Sandre refuses to give up. He takes his turn to give artificial respiration to his father. Suddenly, Christian wakes up and spits out the water from his mouth. They embrace. In the morning, Julia watches every survivor who arrives. She hopes her father will return soon. And from behind a helicopter, her father, mother, and brother are safe, and the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.